So welcome back. I'd like to talk today a bit about how habituated we get in life with letting our dreams die. I think most people, including me, until recently, but still struggling occasionally, I think most people have a huge difficulty to dream, to simply allow themselves to dream big. Like, what exactly do I want? But exactly, and not a generic thing, right? Like, you hear all these shortcuts to these dreams that people have. Like, I want more money, I want a new car. If I would only have that thing, then I would be happy. You see all the time, and you hear all the time this inverse causality between having and being, right? I need to have something first in order to be happy. I need to have something first in order to be fulfilled. As if that object would close a gap that you unconsciously developed throughout maybe tens of years, right? Decades. So, did you ever actually ask yourself, what do you really want? What is it that you want to live today, now, in the present, so that you feel happy and fulfilled about your own existence? And I argue that for most of us, including me again, for most of our lives, we didn't afford to spend time and define what is that dream, because that would mean to drop everything that we've built up to that point, to drop and pivot from that stable and secure life for a life of freedom, ultimately, right? And this is easier said than done, right? We are living paradoxes. It's very easy for us to spend most of our days in um, problem solving, in low level planning. But when it comes down to just know what we want really in life, what we want, how we want our life to be, what we want to live on a day-to-day basis, this for some reason is very difficult, right? And it gets paradoxically more difficult as we age. It's not like, okay, we are now 40 or 50 and now it's very clear what we want. Sometimes that can happen, right? As a byproduct of accumulating tension throughout the development, to the point where just the simple fact of not acknowledging what is it that we really care about and what we want to experience more of in life gets to take center stage in a more and more aggressive way. So if up to the age of maybe 30, 35, you start to hear some soft voices in the back of the mind telling you, it looks like you're successful, but I don't know what to say about that. I don't really feel happy about it. I don't think that this kind of success is really what we want to achieve in life. And you don't really care about listening to that voice, and you just shut it off and you carry on with your life and do whatever you have to do to maintain basically all the lifestyle and everything that you've built up to that point. And it comes a time when that voice cannot be shut off anymore, right? It's too loud. It's disruptively loud. You cannot just carry on with your things and overlooking that voice, because that voice is the voice of freedom ultimately, right? It's your inner, most sincere and genuine and authentic and ultimately vulnerable voice, but nonetheless the truest, right? The most true voice, if we can say like that. So I challenge you. I challenge you first to muster the courage to really dream big or small, but dream in a way that is not hindered or influenced by the current voices that run in your mind saying that this is a stupid exercise and you should not do it because you're just losing time. I challenge you to do it, to see what comes out of it. It's an interesting exercise. For 99% of people, I'm pretty sure that simply doing an exercise in imagining what their dream life would look like, it would be virtually impossible to define that with enough resolution, right? With enough detail, because at some point, this aggressive mind attached to the current version of yourself will do its best to protect whatever it built and throw mud and stones even at that self in the future who would invalidate this current version of yourself, right? If that future version of yourself, that dream self of yours, that ideal self, is dramatically different from what you are currently living and how you experience your own life today, you will not accept that future. And implicitly, you will not make friends with that future version of yourself because its existence contradicts in itself what you're currently living. And that's yeah, that kind of conflict you cannot support, right? So this whole mindset work that seems so fuzzy for people, including for me for a long time, it turns out to be essential ultimately, because without the mindset, without looking at things differently, you cannot start to do whatever you have to do in order to get to live that life, right? Again, if we have the be, do, have, instead of wanting something, to have something in order to be able to do something so that I can be someone, right? So instead of having the order messed up, if we afford in the present moment to be and live as this future self, as this ideal self who lives our ideal life, and live as that self today in the present moment, if we have the courage to do it, and we can articulate in the present tense the life that we are experiencing, right, at that time, and we can fully embrace that and accept that life. And again, it's a good life. It's your ideal life, right? So why wouldn't you accept it? Well, I don't know. It's a strange thing, right? That happens. This resistance from the current self towards this ideal self is paradoxical, because why wouldn't you want to live your ideal life? But there is so much attached to this image of yourself in terms of who you think or feel you are for yourself. There are so many things attached to this current image of yourself that you cannot just disrupt it easily, right? Attached to it is your own understanding of yourself, right? And your own understanding of yourself, of who you are as a person, unfortunately, is often derived from how others perceive you. So if you struggled your whole life to build this identity that now, puts you on a pedestal and thanks to this identity, you get this kind of validation from the outside world that you are a successful person, irrespective of the fact that you don't feel happy and fulfilled within. This very validation from the world is what gives you this sense of identity, right? This is how you evaluate yourself, based on the appreciation and validation of others, which is very sad if you think about it, because of course no one really can know you deeply more than you can know yourself. If you care to investigate enough to identify who you really are and what you really care about. But we all do it, right? We all assign this kind of strange responsibility and control to the world and to circumstances and to everything that is outside of us, to give us what we need, to complete us, to make us happy, to fulfill us. It's not my responsibility, right, to be happy and have the life that I want to build. It's the world's responsibility. It's my family's responsibility. It's my friends, my community's responsibility. My country's responsibility, my government's responsibility, the world's responsibility, whoever else but us, right? And it's so intriguing for me that the most intimate things that we should own and be responsible for, owning, and even be grateful for being able to own them, like our own development, our own health, our own mind, how it develops, our own financial situation, things which are impacting directly our life, we are so happy to offload them and delegate them to others. Irrespective of how good intentions those people have for us, they cannot know what we want and what we need better than ourselves, right? But because we want to avoid the pain of being honest with ourselves and confronting the fact that maybe we followed the world's plan up to this point and not our own plan, and addressing that would imply a huge disruption on the status quo, we simply reject the journey. We reject starting the introspection to really identify what is it that makes us happy, right? Shouldn't that be the most important project for us in this world? Shouldn't we care most about finding what is it that makes us happy? Should we offload this responsibility to the world, to everything else but our own deep introspection? It's very intriguing indeed. And unless you talk about it, unless you rationalize it, you don't see how absurd it is. That's also the tricky aspect of these strange things that happen, right? Most of our limiting beliefs, if you articulate them, they sound absurd. But if they just run in the back of our mind, in the subconscious, then they seem legit, they seem the truth. One of the reasons I'm doing these videos is to raise to my conscious awareness my thinking patterns and where am I going with my own reasoning and why am I going there. This is really part of my effort to develop myself so that I can then help others in their own struggles, in their own processes, in their own journeys, right? Because this is a never-ending journey. Once you get on it, then that's it. Because you cannot unsee the fact that ultimately everything is possible. One of my favorite quotes that I discovered in a book called Reality Transurfing, written by a Russian author, Vadim Zeland. It's a thick book, but it's an exercise in imagining a model of the world that empowers you as an individual to live the best life that you want and create it to the point of experiencing literally what you want to experience in life and framing challenges and reality itself in a way that works in your advantage and takes you inevitably one step at a time towards your goal. But first, you have to have a goal, right? You have to know what you want. So this whole process of transformation and evolution, it's fascinating for me, because I would not have thought 5 years ago that wanting to know myself and getting to know myself and developing this kind of obsession ultimately for self-development and personal growth would be that exciting. It's very exciting. And it's intriguing that I didn't know myself that much until I started to investigate. And of course, when I started on this journey, I didn't know where it would take me, and I didn't know how easy or hard it will be. But clearly, the results that I got up to this point in terms of the relationship I have with myself, how I feel about myself, how I carry myself, the respect that I have for myself, for my own evolution, it's absolutely amazing. And I personally didn't see anyone who had such a dramatic shift in terms of the perception of reality itself that I have. And that means something, because I subjectively tend to be quite critic to my own progress. And if that appears to me as such a dramatic change, then clearly it is also from the outside. But the outside part, I don't really care about it. I only care about how I register my own progress and my own transformation. How important and significant is that for me in my own relationship with myself? But just to give you like a very basic contrast, I thought of myself as being this kind of a pragmatic pessimist. Like, I know this won't work, right? And I used my intelligence, right, to find reasons why something should not work or cannot work, or I was always seeing the negative. And I was wearing that as a badge of honor. Look, I have this analytical mind, and I know exactly why it will fail, or exactly why this won't work. And I was living in this negative state, and of course, because I was selectively looking for the negative aspects, I was also seeing them, and those aspects were confirming me what I ultimately was looking for. Not knowing that I was building myself my own prison of limiting beliefs and skewed perception of the world, right? Based on the Einstein quote that I love, that the most important decision we have to make is to decide whether we live in a friendly or a hostile universe. I was clearly living in a hostile universe. And from a hostile universe, I now am living in a friendly universe where I'm not a pragmatic pessimist, but rather a future-looking optimist, right? I am very interested and optimistic about the future in what concerns my own abilities and evolution. I don't make general statements about the world, about what will happen in the world, and so on. I think if each of us takes ownership fully of their own development, I think that's arguably the most important contribution positively that we can make in the world. But I was saying, I was referring a quote that I liked from Reality Transurfing, and it is this: when the idea that any goal is achievable no longer makes you uneasy, doubt will melt away, and faith will be transformed into knowledge. When I read this, I was like, yep. So I will say it again because it's so deep and so profound and so true. And I lived that quote, right? And I know that it's true because I have enough proof in my life, right? That it's true. And you don't have to believe me. You should just try it, right? Try for yourself. So when the idea that any dream is achievable no longer makes you uneasy meaning like you have some sort of an internal tension towards this goal. When that doesn't happen anymore, then doubt will melt away, and faith will be transformed into knowledge. The reason why we don't achieve our goals is, first of all, we don't define them. Second of all, we don't fully accept them. The idea of a goal, if it's too big, makes us uneasy. And if we are uneasy about achieving a goal, how could we muster up the conviction, the confidence, right, the clarity, and the perseverance to push through obstacles if we didn't first accept the destination, right? There is this thing that we all do, that we are looking at our past in order to anticipate the future. This is the normal way of doing things, and this is how the brain operates, right? We have these past experiences, we store them as memories, and then based on these memories, we try to anticipate the future in a way that doesn't put us in the unknown. We want to predict what happens, because if we predict what happens, then we are safe, then we are secure. And the brain always tries to protect us by keeping us safe. The problem with this approach is that if we think towards our goal, if we have this goal in mind, but we look at our past to know how to do it, how to reach that destination, we cannot reach that destination, right? Because we simply don't know how. If the goal is big enough, looking in the past will not give us the proof or the knowledge itself to help us get to the destination. And we will also face the resistance of our current self towards the evolution that we need to, right, to have in order to reach that destination, in order to have the goal. So the goal is achieved by a version of ourselves who we are not yet, right? If we have some aspirational goal, something that we really want, and we never had that thing, right? We never achieved something that huge, and we only look at our past, of course, that's a recipe for disaster, because we don't have enough proof there. And our mind will ultimately convince us that we can never get there because we have no idea how to do it. And it's dangerous and doesn't make sense to go on this path where we cannot predict anything. We don't like to stay uncomfortable for long. We don't know what's there, right? We don't have any kind of recipe to guide us and people to actually understand what we are going through to support this kind of motion, right? So we just quit. And the fact that we quit is reinforcing the belief ultimately that this kind of goals are unachievable. I'm pretty sure that most of us throughout our lives had big goals, but because pursuing them was not done in a way that was reasonable, basically we failed, and because we failed, then we rejected having goals at all, right, from that point on. But there is a better strategy, right? The better strategy is to act from the goal, not to the goal, right? What does it mean to act from the goal? It means that, first of all, we have to decide that the goal is achievable. How can we decide that? How can we know for sure that a certain goal is achievable? Well, we can be that ideal self, that future self, today, right? We can embody his life through our imagination and report back to the current self. Like we can write a letter, for example, as the future self who achieves, who has the goal, right? The having part is already done as a byproduct of that ideal self of ours doing certain things that he does naturally and implicitly having what we want to have now, right? So let's imagine that the goal that we want to achieve is the having of the being, right? It's the having of our ideal self. If we would write a letter as that ideal self to our current self, who is currently imagining that life, well, we can imagine it to a point where we can become temporarily that ideal self and write down in the present tense what we are experiencing when that goal is already achieved, right? And that ideal self can say, hi, this is me 1 year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now. And I just want to tell you that this is amazing. What I'm currently living today is absolutely amazing. I didn't expect this. This is my everyday experience of life. This is where I live. This is who I'm surrounded by. This is what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. This is, my entourage. These are the people that surround me. This is what I like to do. Everything is amazing, right? And you can be very articulate with what is it concretely in that daily experience of your ideal self that makes life so enjoyable. And you write it to the present tense to your current self, right? As that future self. And when you can write that and fully accept that future vision as your future self, then you cannot help but be grateful for the current self for doing the effort and the necessary actions, for taking the necessary actions to reach that destination, right? Because again, your future self already lives that life, and he can or she can report back to the current version of yourself what he or she is experimenting in their life, right? In the present tense. And of course, your ideal self will also say, look, and I also want to be grateful for everything that you did, because everything that I live today in my life is thanks to your efforts, right? So you feel this gratitude for yourself and for what you've built up to this point, right? You feel the gratitude of your ideal self as your current self. And this gratitude that you feel, because it's yours and you feel it, right? This is just a mind game. This is just a mind projection. And this is why the mind is so powerful. Because you can use the mind to think about the past and ruminate about whatever bad experiences you think you had in the past, or be anxious about the future. But you can also use your mind to project yourself into a much better version of yourself. You can project yourself into your ideal life and experience how an ordinary day would look like in that ideal life, and report back to your current self how that ideal day looks like, how that ideal life looks like, sorry. And then your current self will feel that gratitude, right? Will feel the gratitude of the future self, who is grateful again for your current self for doing everything required, to build this kind of life. And of course, this is the life that you build for yourself ultimately, right? How I imagine it is that this gratitude is basically the fuel that you need to know that everything you are doing today is in the service of your future self, that you will get to live, right? 3 years from now, 5 years from now, you will end up somewhere. You will inevitably age, right? You will be older. You will become someone else 5 years from now. Why wouldn't you take ownership of this transformation and choose who you will become concretely, right? And this is the best hack I found in my research about, personal transformation and evolution and setting goals and so on. This is the most powerful hack that I actually heard in a book called Be Your Future Self Now. Very good title, by Benjamin Hardy. And it's such a powerful exercise because, first of all, it forces you to accept that beautiful future, that ideal life. And this is very hard to do. Again, paradoxically, it's very hard for us to accept this ideal future of ours when we know that we tried to improve something and we failed and we don't know how to do it. if you just give yourself first the chance to actually live it and articulate it and know how it looks like, then you will see that the everyday experience that you report back as your ideal self is not filled with pleasurable experiences and like flashy things that you buy, right? You will most probably not report from, as your future self, saying, I have 10 cars and I, have 5 houses and I spend all my days on a beach and drinking cocktails. You'll most likely not say that. But strangely enough, these are the kind of goals that you aspire to, to have, to get. Things are very, very simple, right? What we care about the most is to be of service to others. And to do it in a way that feels true to us. And everyone does it differently, but ultimately you cannot serve only your own interests. That's why when you will do this exercise and you will project yourself as your future self, you will see that most of your reports, like what you are experiencing in that life, will be about relationships, about people that are close to you, about who you can help, how you can help them. And that thing in itself will give you satisfaction and fulfillment, not your material possessions. So once you do this exercise, your current self will have a clear image of your future self experiencing the life of their dreams. And because you realize that that future self, it's still you, but 3 years from now or 5 years from now, then you become excited. And then you start to get pulled into that future. You get to spend more time and energy into building that future with more granularity than you spend time looking at a past which doesn't teach you anything, or you don't take any lessons from it. You now start to build, right, the foundation towards growing into that future self and doing what he is doing, right, in the future, because you can know that, right? He tells you. You just have to listen to him. So once you have this clarity of how the goal looks like, what's this vision of your future that excites you, then you can just act as that future self, and you will not face anymore the resistance from your current self, because you realize that your future self is you and that you will become that person, and you like what you see and you will get pulled into that. And at some point, how I like to see it and picture it, and how I actually experience it today, is like occasionally I see a smile in the mirror. And when I see the smile in the mirror, I know that that's my future self happy, thanking me, right, for all the progress and for all the effort that I made up to that smile, up to seeing that smile. And that's a gift. That's a gift back. That's a recognition, right? It's like, thank you. This is nice, right? And this is a simple thing, but gives me the fuel that I need to do my best also tomorrow, without judging my effort, without being too rigid about my progress, without punishing me if I don't achieve a certain imposed, superficial outcome that I think I should have. I am gentle with myself. I'm compassionate, and I give myself the liberty to not punish myself, because I know that my intentions are pure, and I always operate in the present moment with the best intentions for my future self. And my future self is like a concept, right, in which I wrap all the selves, basically all the day-size selves, from today up to that destination, up to that point in time where I can have this validation of my transformation, right, the phase of transformation. So basically what you want is to optimize for this kind of life, right? You want to optimize for this ordinary day, right? In this ideal life that you have. Because your ideal life will be comprised with a lots of days. Instead of optimizing for peak experiences and, pushing and forcing the world to comply with your needs so that you can get this thing because you think that thing will fulfill you, instead of doing that, you can optimize for the ordinary days in your ideal life. And those ordinary days are not like complacent days in which you don't care about anything. Those ordinary days are the perfect days for you, that you design for yourself, by yourself, against your own values and needs at the time when you design your life, right? And as you design it at some point, and then it will evolve according to how you grow, right? And what you end up becoming every single day. And that will move and move and move, right? But you still have this vision. You have a vision, you grow into it. The more you grow, the more the vision will also evolve with you and so on. And that's a never-ending journey. But the key difference, of course, is that you get to live the life that you design. You don't live a life by default imposed by others that you should just accept as being the one that you should live, because clearly this is what people think you should live, right? The life that you design, you are responsible for it. And the scariest thing maybe is to take ownership of that life, to be willing to assume completely the role that you have in designing your life and living the life that you care about living, irrespective of what others tell you that you should do, right? So in its essence, it's very simple. In its essence, this strategy only requires us to be truthful to ourselves, to have the courage to investigate what is it that makes us happy and fulfilled in life. Imagine that ideal life, crystallize it with enough detail so that this present self becomes pulled towards that ideal life, right? Because it's so rewarding, it's so exciting to see it. So instead of being scared that you might fail of achieving a certain goal and be anxious all the time about what comes in the future, you can simply be grateful for having had the ability to live fully what your future self will experience on a day-to-day basis, right? What your future self will experience in the future when they will live their ideal life, you can experience today by embodying, the future self today, and just report from the future, and you will live that. And because you live that fully and you feel what he is feeling, basically you are that person now, right? You live what they are living now in terms of experience, in terms of emotions, irrespective of the fact that you have material possessions around you or not, right? What you care about are not the goals, are the meta outcomes, right? Are the meta goals. How the goal makes you feel. You don't care about making money, you don't care about buying a car, you care about how having a new car makes you feel. And of course you can then think, okay, why does it make me feel like that? Why do I need a new car to feel like that? Why do I need people's validation in order to feel that way about me? Can't I feel that way irrespective of their validation? And these better questions that you can ask for yourself will be the ones who will ultimately save you and give you complete freedom. Because then you get to craft a life by design, again, according to your own values, and live in full alignment to those values on a day-to-day basis. And now you are optimized for living your ideal life, which is comprised of 99.999% of ordinary days. But those ordinary days are exactly how you want them to be, because you designed them. You know exactly how they look like. If you have some peak experiences from time to time, amazing, right? You should just be happy about it, but know that they are transitory. Know that they are just going to pass. And what remains is tomorrow, which will be an ordinary day. And when that ordinary day comes, the goal is, of course, for you to be as happy and as fulfilled as yesterday when you had this peak experience. I will take my time to simplify these concepts and improve my frameworks of thinking and of expressing this and of helping others to go on this path, because I'm pretty sure that everyone who is listening to me recognizes the truth behind what I'm saying. Right? It's not that you don't know about it. It's not like I'm introducing new information and concepts. Yes, there are concepts, but they are meant to help you experience something. They are meant to point behind a truth that you can already identify if you give yourself the chance to do it. My goal here is not to convince you of anything. My goal here is to give you, or how can I say, let you borrow from me the courage to do this simple exercise of describing how an ordinary day looks like in your ideal life. And ask yourself, why is it so difficult to even imagine that? Especially when you are not happy with what you have today, right? You already know that it's just an imagination, it's just in your head. You will return back to this version of yourself today. No one will take that away from you. So why you cannot do it? Why you cannot give yourself this gift of imagining how your ideal life would look like? Why is there any more important project in your life than this? Why do you think the busyness and the struggle you are now dealing with on a day-to-day basis is more important than figuring out, even if for 5 minutes, what is it that would actually make you fulfilled and happy? First, respond to that question for yourself. Why is it so hard? This is what we should do all day long, right? Who in their mind, in their in their sanity, wouldn't want to understand and live a life that they craft according to their own desires? Who wouldn't like to live a life in alignment with their values? Everyone would. But as you can see, if even imagining it is so hard, how can your current self know how to reach it? If you cannot even define it in a high-level way, how do you know how to get there, right? The destination is so fuzzy that you have no idea how to course correct in order to reach that destination. So courage.